of the chair beneath and behind. Aware of sound outside the room or within the room. Aware of sensations, warmth, coolness, hunger, fullness. Gently aware of whatever's happening within you and around you. Going to the breath. I'm going to introduce a technique. So simply noticing that you are breathing. This is what the body does, whether we choose to pay attention or not, for as long as we're alive. So as you notice your breathing, you'll find perhaps that it has texture. It may be shallow, or deep, or choppy, or smooth, or something in between. And maybe notice where you feel your breathing. Around the nostrils, the upper lip. Aware of the chest and ribs gently expanding and contracting. Noticing the abdomen rise and fall. So just letting your attention settle wherever you feel your breathing most prominently. Riding the waves of the breath as it moves in and out of the body. And as you do this, you may notice that there are thoughts going through the mind. And that's okay. Because we don't block thoughts out. We don't block anything out. So if a thought comes into the mind, notice what's drawing your attention away. Acknowledge that thought. And then release it. Let it go. Bring the attention back to the breath, in and out. So I'm going to be silent while we practice this, just for a few more cycles of breathing. And following the next breath in and out. As you begin to transition, remembering that this place of awareness is always available to you because it's within you. So allowing the eyes to gently flutter open if they were closed. Reacquainting in our space. Just noticing how you feel right now. Noticing the energy of the room. So do we have a microphone that we can use? And so the present moment often gets squashed out by all of our preoccupation with the future and the past. And so we're not saying that that's bad. Mindfulness is, of course we're going to plan. I'm actually planning vacation right now. So it's healthy to be able to plan for the future, and it's healthy to be able to reflect on the past because we need that to be able to grow and to have goals in life. So it's about noticing also that there is this moment, and this present moment is the only time really any of us can grow or change or learn or love or be present for each other. So a little bit about the, we can go to the next slide. Again, I'll just keep going because I think I wanted to just, I'll come back to that. So when we're doing mindfulness, we have these different, practicing mindfulness, we have these different objects of attention. And if we had sat together longer, and those of you who have been through mindfulness training before are probably aware that there are these objects of attention. We're aware of the breathing, we're aware of thoughts, we're also aware of feelings, sensations, and surroundings as we just practiced. And so we know that mindfulness is not something that's new. It's been around for about 2,600 years, but it's recently, in the last really decade, 5 years, even just the last 2 years, really exploded. And there are, besides Aetna, lots of other companies that are bringing mindfulness programs to the workforce. And in 2016, about 22% of companies are offering mindfulness programs. So I think that says something, that we recognize that in terms of corporate America and life in general, that we're all moving at a pace that really isn't sustainable. And we don't mean to, at work, be burning each other out, but some of our unconscious workplace practices are, in fact, we're burning each other out. So we know that what we're doing is not sustainable, and there's just so much change that we're expected to manage no matter where you work. And so mindfulness can really help us to be able to navigate the change that we're constantly faced with. Just in the last decade, we've had an enormous rise in the number of mindfulness research publications. So if you're looking for research, whether it's for business or for health or for education or law or science, the American Mindfulness Resource Association is a very good resource for finding research to support the work that you're doing or whatever your personal interest is. So these are some of the programs that we have that are really focused on health and well-being. And I'll just talk to the ones that are very specifically mindfulness-based. We have some online program offerings where people can dial in and participate in virtual classrooms. We have some on-site offerings, face-to-face group programs. We just brought the Headspace app, which some of you may be familiar with, to our Aetna employees. A lot of these programs we also sell to the customers that we serve. And probably my favorite is our mindful midday calls, where we actually have hundreds of people dialing in. And it's either Andy Lee, our Chief Mindfulness Officer, or myself that are leading these. But they're 10-minute dial-ins so that people, they're on mute. So the only thing they can hear is me leading meditation. But there's something powerful about knowing that 200 people have dialed in for 10 minutes to practice mindfulness together at work. And so these are some of the things that we're doing for our own workplace culture, and I'll share a slide about that as well in just a moment. So why mindfulness? Well, we talked about some of the benefits, and so mindfulness, one of the main reasons that we practice mindfulness is that it helps us to manage distraction. If you're like the average American, you're checking your cell phone 150 times a day. And research is now showing that the more we're checking our smartphones, the more we're checking email, the weaker our ability is to focus, and we're actually lowering our IQ. So there's a really good reason for us to be able to start strengthening our focus muscle again, and mindfulness helps us to be able to do that, to manage distraction. And one other invitation I would offer is most of us learned to multitask many years ago. It probably was an interview question, right? It's like you're hired on, how good are you at multitasking? And he said, oh, I'm really good at multitasking. Well, you're hired. So we thought that was a skill. We thought that was a workplace skill. And now we know with all of the new brain research that it isn't even possible. It's not possible. The brain can't focus on two things at the same time. So all it's doing is, again, as I mentioned earlier, dividing our energy and lowering our ability to focus and stressing ourselves out. So I'm not saying that we should never multitask, but I would invite us to consider to ask ourselves the question as we're going through the day, in this moment, might it be possible to just do one thing at a time? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. But sometimes the answer is going to be yes. And again, research has come out that has shown that even when we're doing a task that we don't like, that we're happier than when we're multitasking. So it's a question that we can ask ourselves in the moment around what is possible instead of it being like it is for most of us, an unconscious work habit to multitask our way through the day on autopilot, really, right? So we talked a little bit, I was having a conversation with someone earlier about practicing discernment. Because have you ever had the experience where you come into your work day or your day in general and you've got your to-do list and you've got your tasks and your things that you want to accomplish and you know what your priorities are when you wake up and you're having your morning coffee, right? But then as the day goes on, you're getting calls from other people, whether they're children or spouses or family members or co-workers, and all of a sudden you find you're responding to everybody else's needs, and what happened to your priority list? So mindfulness helps us to not react to everybody else's fire drill. Now don't get me wrong, sometimes there is a fire drill, but a lot of times it's someone else has chosen to IM you instead of email you and make that fire drill be your priority. So it's really up to us to determine, is this really the most important use of my energy and time in this moment? Can it wait? And consciously choose, yes it can, or no it can't. Someone said earlier asked if we worry, right? And so I would say most people that I talk to, those worrisome thoughts are what keep us up at night. The body's exhausted. We are completely, physically ready for sleep. But what's keeping us up? Mind, the mind chatter, that monkey mind, that unconscious stream of thoughts that just on and just won't quit. And so as we just practiced a few minutes ago, being able to pause and be present and to follow the breath in and out and notice one thought at a time as it passes through the mind and keep bringing the attention back to the breath. Back to home base, back to your new BFF, right? After this conference. So that can help us to be able to manage those thoughts and have them have less power over us so that we can get to sleep at night, because we really are in a sleep crisis. And sleep is impacting everything, whether it's our safety at work, waking up feeling exhausted instead of refreshed, our ability to focus and be clear so we can make solid decisions that are aligned with our value system every day. Without sleep, we really can't practice that high level of self-care and really navigate through the day with the kind of grace and ease that we all want to, right? How many times have either you been in a restaurant with someone you really care about or watched somebody else in a restaurant paying for a very nice meal, but nobody's paying attention? We're all on our smartphones. I mean, I've caught myself doing that sometimes, especially with my kids, because they're always on their smartphone. So, having, to be able to set boundaries for what are we doing here? Like, we're out to dinner. This is not something we do all the time. Can we be here now? Is that even possible? Or how many times have we been in meetings and someone is talking, but everybody's responding to emails? I'm sorry, I got an email. Sorry. I'm with you, but I'm not. So this has become an accepted way of being with each other. That I'm with you, but I'm not. And we master the art of pretending, like we're paying attention to you, but I got all this going on. Like, do we really even know how to do that anymore? So I feel like mindfulness to me is such an important skill for us to be able to have, to be able to feel connection to each other at home and at work, and to actually remember what it feels like to be present. Raise your hand, because I've done this too. I'll put myself in the mix. Have you ever been listening to someone
and you're already formulating what you're going to say when they finally shut up? Because the patience, we want everything to happen so fast. So we want everything to go faster than it is, so we're not patient with ourselves, we're not patient with each other, we stop listening. And so this being able to really be present for each other is very powerful. It has an enormous healing impact. We don't even have to say anything brilliant, but being present for another person has an enormous healing effect, and it helps to build trust in families and on work teams when we're really willing to pause and be present and listen to each other. We know that emotional intelligence as a very important part of leadership. I'm sure Michael will touch on this later. That we know that ability, right? 25 years ago, before Daniel Goleman wrote Emotional Intelligence, we thought it was a useless thing. We'll stop being emotional. We were not given permission to acknowledge our emotions. It was not valued. And now we know that without that, we can't collaborate, we can't lead, whether it's at work or in our families. We need mindfulness to be able to help us be present for ourselves and what we're feeling, the emotions that we feel in the moment. Mindfulness is about simply creating space to be with whatever feeling we feel without any judgment or criticism. And the more that we're willing to be able to be present for ourselves in that way, the better we're able to be present for each other, which is very important, again, in communications, whether it's at work or at home. And if we want to be able to tune in and to be able to read a room or be able to read a team or read an individual, we need emotional intelligence to do all of that. And mindfulness helps us to be able to cultivate emotional intelligence. Being able to innovate or be creative, being able to think clearly, to kind of clear away all the clutter, all the noise so that we can come up with, a great idea or a great strategy, requires pausing and letting go of all the noise so we can get to those nuggets, right? And coming from a wellness background as a coach, to me, this particular reason, mindfulness being able to help us to be able to practice a higher level of self-care. Because when we're in the moment, we don't realize, I know there's a statistic on this, and maybe somebody in the room knows how many decisions we make in a day. It's a lot. We make thousands of decisions all day long. And so to me, mindfulness and this ability to be present in the moment helps us to be able to ask ourselves, in this moment, what is the most self-caring choice I can make? Do I need to stand up because I've been sitting over an hour? Do I need to take a bio break? Do I need to hydrate? Do I need to feed myself? Do I need to go just look up at the sun and feel the heat on my face? Do I need to call somebody at home? What do I need? What would be the most self-caring thing I could do right here, right now? And so we talk about wellness, we talk about health, and we talk about well-being, and mindfulness to me is the culmination of many choices that we're making all day long that are accumulating at the end of the day. It's not one thing. It's not just going to the gym or just eating right or getting into bed at a particular hour. It's all the things that we're choosing or not all day long that are adding up to create our optimal health and well-being, right? And lastly, at least for this conversation, when we're in fight or flight mode, how many people have heard of fight or flight, right? We're wired this way. This is how we keep ourselves safe when we feel a threat. And you've probably heard this. The body doesn't know, the brain doesn't know whether we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or if someone just cut us off. The body reacts the same no matter what. So we go into this fight or flight mode. And mindfulness, as we practiced just a few minutes ago, simply following the breath in and out a few times gets us out of fight or flight mode and back to what we call rest and digest. That's body homeostasis. If we're willing to take a few breaths here and there as we're going through the day, how do you think that might impact your body when you get into bed at night? Any thoughts on that? What the connection might be?
Probably rest more soundly. Yeah, I think we'd just kind of be able to sleep through the night maybe.
Yes, because we would be able to sleep better, because here's the thing. When we're jacked up, revved up, America runs on Duncan all day long, we're like up here, right? We're exhausted, we get into bed. It's too far of a drop. We can't come down that fast to get to sleep. So if we're willing to take a few breaths periodically as we're going through the day, we're always coming back to rest and digest. We're always coming back to body homeostasis. So we don't have so far to come down from at night. And when we're in fight or flight, we know that we're not thinking straight, right? Has anybody ever had a positive outcome for when you've done or said something when you're in fight or flight? Have you ever had things get better in that moment when we're reacting? I know I have, and usually I make things worse. So the idea is to be able to keep ourselves out of fight or flight as often as is possible so that we can think clearly, so that we can practice a high level of self-care and not do the things that we do when we're in that reactive state where we're just zoning out on more TV, or we're in the refrigerator at midnight, or having that third glass of wine, or lots of other things that we do that actually bring us harm, right? So mindfulness can help us to be able to make clear choices in the moment. That someone said self-love earlier, and I'm all about that too, but if that's a little bit of a distraction, maybe we could start with self-care. Next slide. So, in the spirit of transparency, Aetna hired a chief mindfulness officer in February, Andy Lee, who is my manager. I can't believe that I still have to pinch myself that we have a chief mindfulness officer in corporate America and he's my boss. And this is our strategy, inside out. We, as Aetna, came out with programs that, as I mentioned earlier, were related to the research that we did back in 2009. And we realized, we really need to take a step back because, there's a big difference, right, between having wellness programs and having a workplace culture of well-being. They're not the same thing, right? Because you got to start somewhere. And so we have a history of having a very comprehensive suite of wellness program offerings for our employees and for our customers. Where our growing edge is how do we evolve from that to really bringing mindfulness into the workday so that we're showing up differently. So that's the journey that we're on. And so we, like many others, are still trying to figure that out, but grateful that we get to try this. Next slide. So these are just some tips, and as you're thinking about how you might bring mindfulness into the places where you work, these are from our own experiences, what we've done in terms of really socializing and educating what mindfulness is, really debunking the myths, explaining what it is and what it's not. A lot of times people will have these preconceived ideas of what they think mindfulness is, and they may or may not be accurate. There's a lot of information about mindfulness out there today, and it's very, very confusing. So our first job is really to educate on what mindfulness is and what it's not, and to try to kind of take the woo-woo out of it, if you will. And our strategy has been very much top-down, bottom-up, side to side. So yes, we're very fortunate that we have Mark Bertolini as a leader, but that's not enough to drive a strategy through an organization. Yes, you have to have grassroots, and I've seen other companies who only have grassroots who are being very successful. As we all know, it all gets stuck in middle management, right? And so you can have top-down, but you can only get so far. You can have bottom-up, and you can only get so far. So it's the middle managers. In our organization, we have working managers. Their primary job is not only managing and coaching people. They actually have jobs and have direct reports. So that's where everything gets stuck in corporate America, right? So we're trying to provide toolkits for middle management to help break through and create time and make it so that mindfulness is not one more thing on their to-do list, but something easy and beneficial and not scary to bring to teams. So as I mentioned earlier, we offer a lot of different types of wellness programs and practice tools. We recognize that there really isn't a cookie cutter approach. We're a company, on my earlier slide, I'll tell you what I was going to tell you earlier, we're a company of 50,000 people. Half of us work at home, 70% of us are women. We've got a creeping age, the average age is 45, so we have some unique differences and nuances for our own employee population. So we recognize that we need to offer a lot of different tools and resources because everyone's going to engage in a different way. And as you would imagine with a company of 50,000 and growing, that even within that's like a microcosm of the world, that not everybody wants the same thing. So again, as we continue our journey from the inside out, working on our own workplace culture, and then sharing what we're learning with our customers and in the communities that we're serving. Yes, please. Let's make sure we get the microphone so that people can hear, or if you don't mind standing up so everyone can hear.
Just your last point on the prior slide was to measure and communicate results. Can you talk a little bit about how you measure?
Sure. So what I shared earlier was from our programs, right? So that's different. Our workplace culture, what we just are wrapping up right now, we did a June Mindfulness Challenge, which we haven't added those results in because we don't know what they are. That will be in my next presentation. So we had the highest number of engagement in our June Mindfulness Challenge of any corporate initiative in the last year. So people were really excited. We had 14,000 hits on the first day. So we're in the process. Our June Mindfulness Challenge, we had 4 different themes, one theme each week, and Andy and I we each taught the themes. They were foundation, focus, energy, and resilience. And so we had videos, we had audio practices, we had work tips, and we had articles that we shared, and resources that we shared. And so Aetna employees, Aetna is our Facebook for Aetna, so that's our intranet that we launched this June Mindfulness Challenge on. So that's, to answer your question, the first time that we have ever done an enterprise-wide initiative. Because again, it's one thing to offer a program. This was the first thing that was done across the whole enterprise. So this is our first chance to measure. So we're in the process of putting together that report. So maybe if I come back next year, I can share that with you. What are your biggest pain points? What are your biggest challenges as you're going through your day? And how can mindfulness help to be able to make your day go with a little more ease? And so we'll be in the process. We're in the process of creating those tools now. So they're not created yet.
And with the initiative that you just talked about doing, was there an incentive in order for folks to participate in the initiative?
Great question, and we like our incentives on that. So we had 9 drawings. We gave away 5 subscriptions to Headspace, annual subscriptions, 3 Amazon gift cards, and 1 set of Bose head speakers. So we like our incentives. Someday I know we're going to get to intrinsic motivation only, but we're not there yet. I have been presenting to lots of different areas across the enterprise, and last week was to our compliance, so to our IT, because usually we think, oh, that must be just the clinicians, right, because they're more open to this, but we're seeing everyone. There is no right, and we'll know more after we get the results from our June challenge, like I was describing earlier, but in terms of who is asking Andy and I to come to their sites or to come to their teams, it's just really across the organization. So I feel like the time, there is a shift, and we're starting to, you see the needle just doing this. One thing that would be a sign of success to us is lower stress levels, for sure. And maybe we could go back to one of those slides about stress and medical costs, and I'll try to kind of build a whole picture here. And one thing that we know is that we want to be able to help this one, and I'll talk to that last. So first and foremost, we want to be able to attract and retain talent, right? We want to be able to have an energized workforce. We want to be able to have a very high level of collaboration and have high performing teams. We want people to be, as I mentioned, less stressed and more resilient, able to focus. So these are the things that we will eventually be measuring. Right now, because this is the beginning, again, as an enterprise initiative, we're really looking at what the engagement is. So how many people participated, and can we even engage people in these kinds of practices at work? And we have already demonstrated that we were told, I'm not a social media person, I don't know how to measure these things, but we were told we blew it out of the water. So in terms of engagement, so right now, success is people are practicing, they're listening to our audios and watching our videos and reading articles and using the work tips. They're using what we've provided. So engagement right now is a great place to start. And then the other part is, what are people saying? Thousands of comments on our intranet about how mindfulness is helping them at work and at home. So right now our main focus is to see, are we actually helping people, and what are our employees saying about it? From the study that I mentioned earlier, this is what we found. So if from a business perspective, this is the only reason a company implements mindfulness, there's a really good reason. This is a correlation. And this was between stress and medical costs. So as a side analysis in our research study back in 2009, we wanted to see if there was a relationship between stress and medical costs. And as you can see, Group 5, who reported out on the perceived stress scale with the highest level of stress, also had the highest medical costs. So while we can't apply causation, there certainly is a relationship. Definitely mindfulness is how we can build our core competencies. We don't view mindfulness as a separate core competency. We believe mindfulness is how we're going to be able to demonstrate our values the way that we have articulated. And so I think it helps us to build our core competencies. And in terms of meeting behaviors, we talk a lot about, this might sound very basic, but it's an example. First level of consciousness is, do I need to have a meeting? Is it really necessary? Instead of just on autopilot, we schedule meetings, and some are reoccurring meetings, and we have all these people that are included, and we're not even sure why they're there, but we just want to make sure we're successful at the end of the meeting. And so mindfulness in terms of meetings is that first question, do I even need one? And if I do, what is the agenda? And making sure I'm clear about what that is and who's there, and I have the right people, so that I'm being respectful of other people's times, and how long should the meeting be? When we're reaching out to communicate to each other during the day, am I on autopilot that just because I'm working on something that I think it's okay to I am somebody? And ask them a question that's this long that I am when it really needs to be an email? You know, so that consciousness around how we're burning each other out without meaning to. So I think it's those kinds of things that we're looking for in terms of the day-to-day, how do we show up and work together during the workday, and then bringing it into our meetings in ways that are comfortable. someone might not be comfortable leading a 5-minute or a 1-minute mindfulness meditation, but maybe they will ask their team to read an article and to come back and discuss, what did you think about that article? Or maybe they'll show a video that we have, or play an audio so that together their team can practice mindfulness together. So I think that part is where I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be cookie cutter, but giving folks ideas for how they can comfortably bring mindfulness into their own workday at the individual level, and then what the possibilities are for sharing it with their teams, or as someone mentioned earlier, giving permission for your teams to be able to have time to go out and utilize the tools that we are providing. So how about we take 3 breaths together? I think we're getting ready for a break. Just to end. So thank you everyone for the privilege to be here and share a little bit about my own journey, about our journey at Aetna, and share this practice which is very precious to me, and I do believe can help us to be able to get more joy out of life, to lower our stress levels, sleep better, practice a higher level of self-care, really the potential to improve any area of our health and well-being if we're willing to just pause and be a little more present in the moment. So thank you for this opportunity and wishing you many more mindful moments.